With that, in a special version of this morning's View, we're taking a look back to some of the biggest showbiz news stories of the year.
And to do that, we're joined by Gyles Brandreth, who's wearing a very appropriate year-end jumper.
It is. It's the end-of-the-year jumper.
Coming up to the end.
Because it's a festive season, though. 'Tis the season to be jolly. I've added a few pom-poms.
You have got a
to
little...
get my friend excited.
Little merkin going on. And Carol Vorderman is here as well. Lovely to see both of you. It's funny, actually, when you look at these stories which occupied all the column inches, everyone's minds, everyone's gossip and conversation, how far away they all seem to be.
They seem like years ago.
Yeah.
So this first one is not going away. It's being turned into a stage show, and I think there's talk of a movie. So this one could run and run. It is the Wagatha Christie trial.
So 3 years of legal arguments, millions of pounds in lawyers' fees, created headlines around the world, but the Wagatha Christie saga came to an end for that stage in July. Rebecca Vardy lost the libel battle against Colleen Rooney over a viral social media post after a High Court judge found it was substantially true.
Well, I loved this for the wrong reasons. One, I mean, the idea of the two people in conflict. Two, I come from a family of lawyers. My father was a lawyer, my grandfather was a lawyer, my son is a lawyer. I thought, this is fantastic. The more time they spend in court, the more the lawyers will be getting. But this really actually was quite sad because it was two former friends and it was all about actually the problems of the age in which we now live, where you send messages to people. And so there was a mixture of elation because of the money for the lawyers and sadness that it had come to this.
Well, it had probably the greatest headline of the year. I mean, the moment somebody created Wagatha Christie, we were all very much invested.
Gift, wasn't it? It must have been some Fleet Street journalist, I think, but it was a touch of brilliance.
And it was the nature of what Colleen had done, this kind of investigating, sort of setting this trap in a way to kind of capture who she thought had wronged her.
So, did you know that often people have more than one social media account? I didn't know that, but she had one which was a private account, and only so many people were allowed access to it. And then there were stories which were being leaked to the press that she didn't want. This is Colleen Rooney now. And then... So she wanted to find out who was leaking these stories. So she planted a few fake stories on this private social media account, and then those got into the press. So she was looking at who was looking at the stories and all of this, all very complicated, Gyles. And she concluded that it was Rebecca Vardy. And then she made this announcement of what she'd done, and she said, and the person is, and she named her. At which point...
the lawsuit began.
Whoa, that's when it all
And the judge
off.
concluded that it was really Rebecca, as it were, from her sources. Rebecca still seems to be in some denial about this. She's not actually saying, I fess up.
So what happens then in that case is if, as you say, it does happen, that there is either a movie or a stage show or something, how does Rebecca feel about that? That is essentially, you know, sort of a very painful time for both of them, obviously. But you lost, and now there it is on stage.
Well, this is the world we now live in. Think about the royal family and the crown. It's exactly the same thing. And it's become a very popular form of new kind of drama. Almost instantly, an event has taken place. We had, for example, Kenneth Branagh playing Boris Johnson earlier this year. And once things are in the public domain, they're in the public domain and it's free to use. And interestingly, we know we don't have copyright on our images. We don't have copyright on our faces. You can't stop a photograph of yourself appearing in the newspaper. You know, we could be...
But if a photographer takes a picture of you and you put it on your social...
They own the photograph.
Then they own the photo and you've got to take it down.
It's a strange world.
It's a funny old world.
Anyway.
Unless they're nice, and sometimes they say, yes, you can use it.
So this was another... something that was put into the public domain, and this was an article written by Amber Heard for the Washington Post, and it was these 11 words that eventually led to this incredible lawsuit that all unfolded. She said 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and obviously Johnny Depp had claimed that these had defamed him, and he sought $50 million in damages. And then, of course, we saw them both in court, which was extraordinary because we were able to watch all of it unfold on TV like a drama already.
There is nothing, in a sense, new to this. We shouldn't feel too ashamed about it because for hundreds of years we've enjoyed this kind of, you know, attention to what's been going on in public. In Shakespeare's play, Twelfth Night, one of the characters says, what great ones do, the less will prattle of. So it's been happening for hundreds of years. So don't feel too bad about it.
But
Amber
this is a
Heard,
very
Johnny Depp.
serious subject, this
Yes.
one, as opposed to Wagatha Christie, forgive me, but that was sort of more who's done it, you know, and it was kind of, that hasn't affected lives. This is about domestic abuse. And there were a lot of organisations and institutions who were watching this. I watched it avidly. I watched it every single day through a YouTube called Emily D. Baker, who had been a deputy district attorney. So you heard about, she was sort of commenting, almost like people do on football matches, you know, commenting on the process and the law and what was going on. She's also very entertaining. And I watched it for weeks. I became engrossed in it.
Well, again, in June, Amber was found liable in all 3 matters of defamation, and the winners here, Gyles, again.
Yeah, the lawyers made a fortune out of this. What is interesting about the court case is when it began, I was in sympathy very much with the girl, with Amber in the case, because your instinct would be. And you're also seeing Johnny Depp over the years, you feel maybe he's not the golden boy he once was. But as the case emerged, I began to change sides. And I thought, well done him going and having his day in court, because actually he is being heard by a judge.
The sad thing with all of these things, though, for both of them, is that the minute you take something like that to court, and as you say, this is a very, very serious subject.
Yes, it is very serious subject.
That your private life is aired everywhere, and not only the specific thing that is being discussed, but also everything else.
Everything else, and you then begin to forget the good things about them. You actually forget that Johnny Depp was the most wonderful singer, actor, performer, so good-looking, so fantastic. You even forget that, Amber was rather fun in Magic Mike. You forget what they actually did. This becomes the story.
It's what happens next, isn't it, after all of these things? And she's been lying low in Mallorca with her girlfriend and 1-year-old daughter, Una. He, is yet to kind of make a storming career comeback, but he has, Rihanna employed him for her latest campaign for Savage Fenty lingerie line. So he's sort of making moves and coming back. What happens after a huge case like this? 19
million uses of the I Believe Johnny hashtag. People out there were supporting him. It was worth his while. He, as it were, rebuilt his reputation through the trial.
There are some things that obviously you look at a court case and that's the jury's job to try and figure out what happened. There are some stories where you know exactly what happened because it was broadcast to the world. And we've got this exact story, one of the biggest showbiz stories, arguably, of the year. The moment actor Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars ceremony back in March.
It's unbelievable. It's shocking. When you think of it, it's like, how on earth did that actually happen? Yes, it did. Before our very eyes. And didn't he do well to stay calm, the presenter, as he was doing it? I mean, we have hosted awards, all of us, in our time, and we know it's a bit nerve-wracking, but usually, it's quite celebratory. The award ceremony I really love that I hosted last year, again, the Funeral Directors Awards, because I love that award ceremony. Mostly, you come onto the stage, you hope not to be hit, you give the person the trophy. Is that quite a quiet affair? Well, no. I bet it's not. It's much livelier than you think, because what happens... I never know what you're going to say. No, but I tell you... It's actually very lively. They're lovely people. And normally in awards, you give them the trophy, they go back and sit in their seats. At the Funeral Directors, no, you give them their trophy. They bury it. No, they're expected to walk slowly to the back of the stage where the curtains part and they disappear behind them. Is that true? Absolutely true. That's hilarious. And I ended the year, just before Christmas, I hosted the Oldie of the Year Awards. And I said, no one's going to hit me. And then I discovered who the winners were. The Duke of Kent, aged 88, the oldest duke in the land, who walked behind King George VI's coffin and then walked by Elizabeth II's coffin. He came along to accept an Oldie of the Year award, and he's a soldier, but he didn't hit me. No, that's good. And then the other winner was Paddington Bear. Oldie of the Year. And I said, but Paddington Bear was created in 1956. He can't be an oldie. They said, no. Like the Queen, Paddington Bear has 2 birthdays. Did you know this? No, I didn't. One on the 25th of June and one on the 25th of December, just the other day. So he's twice as old as you think he is. Well, that I did not know. I didn't. So I think, anyway, it was a dramatic moment for poor Will Smith, but mostly do go to the awards ceremony if you're asked, because mostly they're very loving. And behave yourself. Don't do this. I mean, again, with him, it's sort of what he's gone away. It took him a very long time to apologise for what he did. I think it was 3 months after the incident. He said in a video, he said that there is no part of him that thinks this was the right way to behave. Quite right there. What does this do? I mean, he's fun-loving Will Smith.
I know. And in comedy, movies, in everything. I'm not sure.
So remains one of our favourite guests who came here and was just a completely adorable, giving person. Something in his head snapped that.
He snapped. And he glanced at his wife, didn't he, just before it happened? There was an interesting dynamic of what was going on. And to do something, then you regret it so much. Yeah. Oh, you can't undo the moment.
No, you can't undo the moment. But I think social media played a big part in him not apologising immediately.
Why is that?
Well, because there are a lot of people defending him. You know, not everybody thought that it was a bad thing that he did. They were saying...
You can't hit someone. I mean, ultimately...
No, you can't.
You just can't.
But you know when that all gets involved and then everything is at the extreme?
Social media is really quite terrifying. I have a lovely sister, my older sister, and she knows I'm on Twitter, and she thinks it's like texting me. So she texts quite to the open world.
This is so dangerous.
Oh, no, you weren't very good. You talked again too much. You said you wouldn't talk too much.
This is terrible.
Yes. So she sends these messages. Oh, you were looking very tired today. Are you looking after yourself? And I then phone her up and I say, now, please, Ginny, it's nice to hear it, but there's a separate number that you can actually text me on. She said, I am texting you. And I said, no, you are tweeting. She said, that's the same thing, isn't it? I say, no, it isn't.
That is very dangerous. That is very dangerous. Well, lots of people were devastated after 37 years. We said goodbye to Ramsay Street. It was an emotional goodbye. It was actually quite a brilliant goodbye because we got to see so many people that we loved from Neighbours. 29th of July on Channel 5. We included Margot Robbie, who was, of course, Donna, Kylie Minogue, Charlene was back, of course, Jason Donovan was Scott. Quite the moment.
Oh, it was fantastic. I channeled my inner Mrs. Mangle.
Did you?
At home watching the last episode, I wore my The End sweater, thinking it was the end.
Do you mean this isn't the first time you've worn it?
At home, privately.
Oh, that's
privately, watching the last episode of Life in Ramsay Street.
Yeah.
But there is hope.
Yeah.
You heard?
Yeah.
Well, yes. It's not quite over.
No, there is. It is alleged it may return.
I mean, it is. Was it a big publicity stunt? We don't know because it's coming back. But sometimes it's nice to look back, you know, and the purpose of anniversaries is to look back and celebrate. Yeah. And it was lovely to see the people who left decades before come back and say, "Oh, what's happened to them?" Yeah. We all love that stuff,
we do.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I haven't heard of them. Oh, she's done well. He looks a bit. Oh, he hasn't aged well, or whatever it might be. Yeah. We enjoy that. Yeah. So it was lovely to see that.
In the 1990s, as a result of that programme, my children all went through a phase of having Australian accents.
Where you go
genuinely. Do you remember that?
Totally.
And when they began replaying a few episodes more publicly,
yes,
the twang came back.
Yep.
Well, it's like my girls for a very long time had American accents when they're watching things like Sweet Life, Zach Godey and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. They're watching. They had American accents for ages.
In fact, Belle and all of her friends, when they play in American accents, but they obviously talk without it. It doesn't sort of creep into them, but it's like because that's what they watch. That's how they're watching YouTube things on Roblox, and they're all American, so they do it themselves.
Cameron, my son, always says YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what I know.
Let's do one of your favourite stories. Carol, from the year, was Lost Dog walked himself 5 miles home across Bristol whilst his owner searched for him.
Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful Pip.
There he is.
Oh, look at him.
That dog just wanted to get home.
On the suspension bridge in Bristol. And that was on the CCTV. That's the Clifton Suspension Bridge. And he walked home about 6 miles. He found his way home. And he was actually a rescue dog from Spain. Look, that's complicated.
And he ran away from his owner, didn't he? Libby Bowles.
In the woods, in the Lee Woods. This is exactly where I live. So in Lee Woods, where I walk most days, and then and that's a complicated route to find his way
But he did it with such conviction as well. It's like, I know what I'm doing here.
Trot along.
Well, it's a very clever dog. Gyles, your story is about you.
Well,
and it was a story where you made it to the papers. This was back in May, and it's for the 40th anniversary of your record-breaking after-dinner speech. Do tell.
I mean, it was also the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. I mean, there are more serious things.
Right, okay. It wasn't the funeral director.
No, it wasn't. It was to raise money for a charity. It was the Duke of Edinburgh's favourite charity, the National Playing Fields Association, now known as Fields in Trust. And the idea was to break the record for the longest ever after-dinner speech, which meant I had to speak for 12 and a half hours, non-stop, through the night. But the people from the Guinness Book of Records said, you can't leave the room. I said, well, I've had 3 children. I may need to go to the loo in the middle of the night. It's one of the side effects. They said, you can't leave the room. So I said, what am I going to do? And the Duke of Edinburgh said to me, well, you can get an appliance, you know. And apparently, there is an appliance that you can get. Field marshals use it when they're out on parade grounds, taking the salute for hours. These old gentlemen, how do they do it without having an accident? Well, they go to a company called John Bell and Croydon, who are medical suppliers, and they give them this appliance that you strap about your person. And
so you can just go.
And then you can just go when you want to go. Unfortunately, about 2 a.m, I was ready to go, wearing my dinner suit, the appliance strapped on underneath it. And, well, I hadn't had a dry run. Boom. And I thought, now is the moment to, as it were, relieve myself. And I thought, oh, but I felt nervous. So I thought, I'll tell a joke. And because I didn't know it was going to make a noise or something. And so I told the joke, but I mistimed it because I was nervous and there was silence. And I let go. And then as I let go, I glanced down and I realised that the appliance had slipped its moorings and was creeping out of my trouser leg and snaking its way across the stage. Now, the end of this story, and we may need Dr. Ellie to come and help us on this, the end of this story was that I then couldn't go. And I went right through the night without going to the loo.
Like nervy, you got nervous pee.
Yeah, and I then won the record, raised all the money for the charity, got the congratulatory message from the Duke of Edinburgh, and I had to explain to him. I said, sir, this is very strange, can you help me out? Because not only couldn't I go during the night, I still can't go. It was 3 days before I was able to go to the loo. Isn't that interesting? Well, it's not that interesting, I agree, but it's quite interesting.
Utterly fascinating.
It's a kind of medical condition.
Don't do that again.
I am not. 12 and a half hours. I don't think anyone would listen this time round.
You got it on now?
I would.
You can ask me at 12:30 how I've done.
That really was not a story that I was expecting. Well done.
Giles, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.